Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's broadcast has taken a dramatic and unexpected turn. Moments ago, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sent shockwaves through the political world by releasing previously unseen tapes on live television, tapes that now threaten to upend the very foundation of Donald Trump's public persona. As the footage played in real time, the former president, who had been scheduled for a remote interview just moments later, reportedly collapsed backstage, caught completely off guard by the explosive revelations. This isn't just a political hit. This is history unfolding before our eyes. The tapes, now confirmed to be authentic by multiple sources, include off-camera recordings from Trump's early business and campaign days, revealing not just political strategy, but a dark tapestry of conversations never meant for public ears. The content is damning. It ranges from racially charged rhetoric to previously undisclosed comments about world leaders, private citizens, and even his own allies. But what's perhaps most shocking isn't just what was said, it's who was in the room and how long this was kept hidden. Jasmine Crockett, known for her fierce presence in Congress and sharp legal background, sat silently as the video began. The studio went dead quiet. It started with grainy footage from over a decade ago, during Trump's time on The Apprentice, transitioning into clips from private campaign meetings, financial discussions, and what appeared to be confidential talks with donors and strategists. Viewers watched in stunned silence as Trump appeared to ridicule key voter bases, mock legal authorities, and even suggest actions that teetered dangerously close to criminal conspiracy. Crockett, after the footage ended, turned directly to the camera and said, "This isn't about left or right. This is about truth. For too long, we've been fed a narrative that doesn't align with reality. Tonight, that changes." She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. It was the controlled fury of someone who had been sitting on truth for too long and decided tonight was the moment it had to come out. Behind the scenes, sources say Trump's team descended into chaos. Advisors scrambled to assess the legal and political fallout. The former president, initially set to respond live, was removed from the broadcast schedule after collapsing backstage. Medics were called, and those statements from his team suggest it was due to exhaustion and stress. Insiders claim it was more than that. It was the weight of years of secrets crashing down in an instant. As social media lit up, the implications became clear. This wasn't a partisan ambush. This was a meticulously calculated release of evidence, backed by timestamps, witnesses, and verifiable metadata. Crockett reportedly came into possession of the tapes through a whistleblower, a former Trump insider who had reached out to her office months ago. The delay in release, she says, was due to verification and legal clearance. Tonight was no accident. Tonight was the day they were ready. What's equally compelling is the silence now echoing from Trump's usual defenders. Cable pundits, Republican lawmakers, and right-wing influencers, so quick to spin or deny our pausing, recalibrating. Because while the tapes themselves are damaging, it's the raw authenticity that makes them impossible to dismiss. This isn't someone's word against Trump's. It's Trump's own voice, unfiltered, off-guard, and entirely unprepared for the spotlight. Already, calls are mounting for formal investigations. Legal experts suggest that certain comments in the recordings may open new avenues for prosecution, especially concerning obstruction of justice and possible financial fraud. The Department of Justice has issued a statement acknowledging the tapes and confirming they are in the process of reviewing them. Meanwhile, members of both parties are demanding immediate hearings. There's a sense that this is not just a political scandal, it's a national reckoning. For Jasmine Crockett, this moment marks a dramatic escalation in her political journey. Once seen as a rising star in progressive circles, tonight she solidified her position as a fearless truth teller willing to go where others wouldn't. She ended the broadcast with a chilling promise. This is only the beginning. There's more, much more. Across the nation, millions are rewatching the footage, parsing every word, every facial expression. And for Trump, once the master of media manipulation, The tables have turned. He is now the subject, not the orchestrator of the story. A man who built an empire on branding, now watching that brand unravel in real time. Tonight was not about gloating, not about vengeance. It was about exposure, the kind that strips away the slogans and sound bites and reveals the raw, uncomfortable truth underneath. For some, it may be vindication. For others, heartbreak. But for everyone watching, it was unforgettable. And as the cameras fade and the analysts begin their work, one thing is certain. The era of silence around these tapes is over. The era of consequences may just be beginning. One of the most shocking and consequential moments in the release of the tapes came during a segment recorded in what appeared to be a closed-door meeting with top Trump campaign officials, where Donald Trump casually discussed manipulating voter outreach strategies in minority communities, not through genuine connection or policy, but by leveraging disinformation and targeted suppression. In this segment, his voice is unmistakable, steady, calculated, and disturbingly detached from the ethical weight of his words. He reportedly instructs aides to distract them just enough not to show up, referring to Black and Latino voters in key battleground states. The chilling tone of the conversation, paired with the strategic clarity of the messaging, drew immediate comparisons to political tactics more commonly associated with authoritarian regimes than democratic campaigns. This part of the footage, more than any other, seems to have sent ripples across the nation, not just because of what was said, but because of how casually it was delivered, revealing an intentional strategy designed not to win over voters, but to strategically disenfranchise them for electoral gain. The implications of this revelation are monumental, not just politically, but morally and historically. In a country still grappling with the long shadow of voter suppression, particularly among communities of color, this confirmation of intent from the highest level of a presidential campaign is deeply unsettling. It's one thing to suspect that political forces may be working against equitable voting access. It's another to hear a former president discussing it openly, without shame or fear, behind closed doors. The language used in the clip is not cloaked in political euphemism or sanitized by consultants. It's blunt, transactional, and disturbingly revealing of a mindset that sees democracy as a game of manipulation rather than representation. This section of the tape has already been dissected by legal scholars and civil rights activists, many of whom are now calling for a federal investigation into whether Trump's campaign violated voting rights laws, including provisions under the Voting Rights Act of 1965. What elevates the seriousness of this revelation is not just the content but the context. The conversation took place during the height of Trump's 2020 re-election campaign, a period already marred by allegations of voter intimidation, questionable ballot practices, and inflammatory rhetoric around mail-in voting. Now, with this tape, there is hard evidence that the campaign's leadership, including Trump himself, was not just passively benefiting from chaos, but was actively engineering strategies to sow confusion and apathy in specific communities. Perhaps even more disturbing is how Trump refers to these communities, not as fellow Americans, not as citizens whose voices matter, but as obstacles to be managed, outmaneuvered, or silenced. He reportedly states, "They're not with us, so why make it easy for them, confuse the dates, flood them with noise, make it a mess? Most won't even try." It's a strategy that strips away all pretense of democracy and replaces it with cynical manipulation. And it's not just theory. Voters across the country remember receiving misleading robocalls, confusing text messages, and contradictory information on polling places. This clip offers a glimpse into the possible origin of those tactics, lending credence to the idea that what felt like chaos to the public may have been orchestrated sabotage from within. Civil rights groups have responded with a renewed urgency, calling for sweeping reforms to protect voting rights ahead of the next election cycle. NAACP Legal Defense Fund issued a statement within hours of the broadcast, declaring the tape a smoking gun that proves what communities of color have known for generations: that systemic voter suppression is not an accident, it's a strategy. Others have pointed to the broader implications for democratic legitimacy. If elections can be manipulated not just through gerrymandering or legislative trickery, but through psychological operations aimed at targeted demographic disengagement, then the very notion of free and fair elections stands on a precipice. For Trump's political opponents, the footage offers a devastating line of attack. But even for his allies, the reaction has been one of stunned silence, while some attempted to deflect, suggesting that the tapes may have been taken out of context. No one has yet denied the authenticity of Trump's voice or the fact that the conversations occurred. In political circles, context often becomes a shield, but in this case, the context is damning in itself. It's a group of political operatives led by the President of the United States, deliberately discussing how to keep American citizens from voting. Jasmine Crockett's decision to release this portion of the tape first was no accident. Her background as a civil rights attorney gives her a deep understanding of the historical weight of voter suppression in America, particularly against Black Americans. By starting with this segment, she made it clear that this isn't just about holding Trump accountable. It's about holding up a mirror to a political system that has too often tolerated, excused, or ignored attacks on democratic participation. Her expression during the broadcast said it all: not triumph, but fury; not celebration, but conviction. She wasn't just revealing a scandal, she was igniting a call to action. As the nation absorbs this portion of the tape, the consequences are just beginning to take shape. Investigations will be launched. Congressional hearings may be called. Trump's legal team will scramble to issue rebuttals, and partisan pundits will attempt to reframe the narrative. But the core truth, now etched into the public record, cannot be erased. The voice of Donald Trump, caught on tape, planning to suppress the vote of millions of Americans based on race and political assumption, has turned a long-suspected reality into undeniable evidence. What the nation does next, how it responds, reforms, and resists, may define the very soul of its democracy in the years to come.